This is a very quick intro to Figma. I'm not going to explain any intricate features, settings, whatever else. I'm going to explain just the fundamentals to get you going right away. So Figma basically have three fundamental things you can do in it. Let's click on the rectangle and draw a rectangle. So that was simple. You see fields, you can change them. That's nice. Now you can option drag, for example, and create a new rectangle by copying the first rectangle. And the second thing you need to know about Figma is groups. So group is just, you see in the layer panel, it's just a folder of the basic elements, basic layers. So when I select the group, you see if I do this, I transform everything that is within the group. But when I move something here, for example, you would see that the group changed its size and now it works like this. So the group doesn't have its own properties in terms of size. It has a position. You can change the transparency of the whole group and things like that, but it abides to your changes within the group and it gives you new transform handles. And so far so good. And the most important concept you would need for Figma to know to understand in Figma is a frame. Frame, you can turn any group to a frame just by clicking on this menu. Just by clicking on this menu and picking the frame. But the frame, like so far, it looks very similar except for the name. But the frames are very different. For example, if I do this, you see that it clips what's inside of it. And you can think of the frame as not just a folder to organize things, but as a container to actually contain the things. And it has its own properties. Like it's not only opacity, you can add a fill to the frame. And you can see that there's a background behind these objects. And you can round the corners, for example. And yeah, you see that shape clipping what's inside the frame. You can turn this off and on, but the frame remains. And you see that frame doesn't affect what's inside of the frame if you don't do anything. This is what's by default. And yeah, this is basically it. These are like the fundamentals of Figma. You need to understand first. So the group, so the basic layer and the container, which can be like you almost never use the group. You almost always use the frame. So groups are just for organizing stuff, and frames are actually for doing your design most of the time. So as for the basic shapes, there are rectangles and ellipses. They are most useful ones. You can round the shape of the rectangle to turn it into something like an ellipse. So actually the ellipses used like 5% of the time, and 95% of the time you use the rectangles for everything. And the other thing that you would need for the interfaces is text, obviously, because interfaces are made of text. So we just click and type, and here you go. And you can drag your text inside of the frame, and you have a frame with all this. So even with this knowledge, you could also already start designing an application or a website. So the next fundamental thing that you would need to know about Figma is components. So basically, you're designing a site, and you want to, let's say, have a certain kind of element on the site that is repeating. And basically, what you do is to turn a frame like this into a component. You click here, and it becomes a different color, has a different icon, and now this is a component. It has the same name, but yeah, the UI is slightly different. And what it means that you copy this component, and now you have a different frame elsewhere. You can also modify it. To some extent, you cannot pick object inside it and drag it. It's not allowed for the components. But once you modify the main frame, it's called the master component. So for example, I will align these things, and you see that this change was applied to this thing, which is called an instance. So no matter how many instances you make, all of the changes you make to the master component are applied to the instance. And what makes it useful is that you can change this text, for example, and you have now two instances with a similar structure. And like if I change the font size, for example, here, it would update it everywhere, and you have all your overrides intact. You can do the same with colors. So if you need an image fill, yeah, you can even generate images in Figma these days. Takes a bit too long. Yeah, but this is basically an image fill. So you can change the fills, the strokes, you can add a stroke, and then when you change this thing, it will update itself everywhere, and the remain. Changes remain. Uh, So now you're like 90% ready to design almost any application. You can stop right here and proceed and with this knowledge and hmm, learn the app by, for example, copying some design. This will teach you basically everything you need to know along the way. But if you want to be more efficient, I'm going to show you a couple of tricks. So you see these overrides here. Um, so now when you actually like copy this thing, there's like if you have many elements here, it's not that easy to select each of the elements and make the changes. So, and also sometimes you want to have, for example, I'm going to break this component. So there's an option to detach this instance. And now it's like completely free form thing. If you change here, it doesn't apply to everywhere else. But I want to make another component out of it. By the way, you can rename frames. So now what I want is, for example, I want this thing to be here, and I want this to fill this part. And I'm going to like copy and it works. I can change the text here, also works, everything as usual. But for example, if I want to change this layout to this, and I do this, for example, it tells me, by the way, it tells me which component I'm using. So now I see this frame one component, which is here, and I see this component two. I can switch the component I'm using, and it tries to retain the overrides here and to like adopt whatever else is happening, like adapt all of your overrides to the new component. But the problem is that it worked here. Um, so let's say I just copied and transformed this, and it worked until the internal structure of this thing is the same. But let's try to change things. So I call this a layer a tile, and then I'll copy another what I meant to do is just copy another instance of this and try to adapt to this new component. And it still works because like I have renamed this thing, but Figma is smart. It sees like these three things. It's still the same things, and it just helps you to adapt. But what if I um, make more changes? So I'll just go ahead and do this, frame this selection. So I created another frame here, which contains this block. And let's try now. It worked again. Figma is still too smart these days. But what if I do this? Let's try again. And now Figma just is confused and it doesn't know to where apply this change because there are two text layers. And if you want to turn this component into this shape, um, like Figma doesn't know what to do, but it still knows that it can retain this fill. So to handle that, um, basically what I would do is to create a property. So let's say I want this title to be persistent no matter what I do with the component. And the property is basically you're telling that Figma should store some string, some value, some text on the component itself and not on the layers. So for example, I type hello here, it's here, and I click this button and it says add apply variable or property. So just use plus and call this property a title. And now I see that it's just hard coded. I mean, what I mean is just like it's I cannot edit it. It belongs to it just takes its value from the property. And when I copy the component, I see that on the instance, I see this title property and I can change it. And it works, it applies it to the component. And let's say I do the same thing here. I create a title property with the same name. So now this component has a title property and this has a title property. And now let's try to do the same trick here. So we have changed the title to header, and I've copied this, and now I'm going to turn this into component 2. And you see that header is retained because it's in the property. And to understand the property better, I would do another component. Actually, let's create a new component from scratch. I copy this title thing and I just make it into a button, like a very simple button. And let's add, let's center it. And let's make it a component. I'm using shortcuts, but we are here not for shortcuts. We are here to learn how Figma works. So you'll be able to figure this later, and all the shortcuts are everywhere. So you'll be able to figure this out. I believe in you. So let's create the same property. We create a property tile, and now I can, yeah, some text. So you see, I can like update the property in this component, and now when I copy, I turn it into a button. It retains this text even though the structure is completely different. But what if I remove this text layer completely from this component? So you see a frame where like there's nothing inside. It's just like an empty frame, but it is still a component, and it is still an instance of this component. And like, what if I then create a new text layer, which is like coming from everywhere, somewhere else, like smaller text. I just drag it inside, and here we go. I see it in the instance. But you remember we created this title property on this component. And if you click on the component, you still see that it is there. And you see that there's some text from this like text from here. So if I go back, oops, so you see that, yeah, let's make a different thing. You see that this thing that was here has disappeared from the bot, but I didn't touch the instance. I didn't do anything. But once I reconnect this text to the title, it's back to this text again, because this thing was always there. This is the text from the property. So you see that, and I think I did a bad job. And I'll try to explain it once again. So if you see, yeah, let's do this from scratch. So I see this, I have this instance of the component, and I drag it here, and I have this example text that is in its property. Now I create a frame which is called button, and I make it a component, and I just create a property of type text, and I said it's a title, and I said it's a button. Create property. I created the property, and there's nothing inside. So I create a text layer, drag it inside, and connect it to the title property, and now it says button. and it comes from this property default value. And I have title property here, and I have title property here. And when I turn this component into a button, it retains the value of this title property. And even if there are no layers inside of the this component that actually able to take this value, it is still there. It didn't disappear anywhere. So uh, let's say I type this text and I delete this and I copy even this, like there are two copies. But this cool button thing didn't go anywhere. Uh, Once I add a new text layer and connect it to the property, it says cool button again, all of its copies. So basically, these properties are for the case when you want some things to always be stored on the components instance, no matter what you do inside. Because when you design something, you just create a lot of these instances, and once you change something, Figma could suddenly reset all these overrides, and you're back to square one, like typing the names for your cards and so on. But once they are in the properties, they are always they're always going to be on the component, even if you just change the master component, it's still there. Even if you delete a layer that is bound to this property, it's still there. So no matter, like, if I delete it and change it to another component, it's still there. So always use properties for all of the important information in the components. And now you know about the components and the properties, which are the most important things about the components. I'm going to teach you how you can speed up your workflow tremendously, as current United States president likes to say. So we see that we have two text layers here. Let's say this is a smaller text. Let's make it smaller. And what if this thing is pretty long and gets long? This apple is nice and fresh. So it gets out of the frame. It gets clipped. And I want to actually retain this. So I mean, I I don't want to this to happen. I want to do something about it, and I want it to adjust nicely as it does in real user interfaces. Because if text doesn't fit on a card, it should wrap and push these elements down. And this is where the auto layout comes into play. So how it works. Let's create something new. I'll copy this word, and for example, I have a text layer and I have a button. I want to make a button. So I create a frame around this text and I add a background. Classical, not so classical. Yeah, let's add some background. And I will change the color of the text to white. And here you go. I have a button, but it's not really cool yet. So if I just have, if I want to have a word button here, it's just if I clip the content of the frame, it's just like either sticks out or just getting clipped. And to help with that, Figma has this thing that is called auto layout. And to add the auto layout to the frame, you have this section in the properties. This adds auto layout, and boom, you have like the frame magically adapting to the label. So now if you make it longer, it just stretches, and yeah, that's the button. But what about the paddings? Like, don't we want uh like it to look nicer, like to have give some space? And Figma has paddings, so you can, let's say, add like horizontal paddings, some vertical paddings, and here you go. Now some rounding, and you're done with doing button. And now I'm copying this, changing the text, and your button is magically adapts to it. But let's say I want to have a couple of buttons. And I decide that I want to move this button here. So what I need to do is just to move it. So I mean, if we redistribute it, them, they are equally spaced, and I can just go here, then drag. Too much helpfulness there. I'm going to drag it here, rearrange. It's like a line again. And what if I want to add another button? Then I'm going to like do everything manually. And as you might have guessed, I can automate this by adding auto layout here. And now if I like move this button here, oops, it just rearranges the whole thing. And Figma just took the average distance between our buttons and applied a gap between the elements. So you can change that. You can click, set it to like some precise value, and you can also have it modified here. And uh, now you can see that we have two auto layouts. notice the special icon here. So we have a button with an auto layout and then auto layout here. So we can change this auto layout inside to look different, and it didn't work because, now let's go a few steps back. So now what we have is Figma doing buttons for us, but if we stretch this, these buttons remain, and Figma incorrectly guessed that we want the buttons to conform to the frame size, but actually we don't want that. Um, you see that there are two, like, there's the width of the button. You can change that, but it also says, like, you've seen that it also said fill. So actually there are three options for the sizing. So the fixed width, what it means is what you just saw. I just said fixed width. It's just like I type something here, and no matter how I size this frame with auto layout, it doesn't change. All the other things remain. You can still rearrange everything, but specifically this horizontal size is not affected by the size of the frame. But there are like three options. This is the fixed width, and I can also change it back to take the size of the container. And now if I make the container smaller, it disregards whatever is inside of the button and it just shrinks. And if I actually make it hug the contents, it just takes its own shape based on the length of the label. So, and in this case, we have a fixed size, fixed width for the frame, but each of these buttons, so I select all of them, they have hug a property. And I can change it to fill, and they will all fill the width of the container. Going to undo that. And these are, I think I have explained like most of the things about the auto layout already. And you can click this little button and adjust paddings like on the left separately from all of the other paddings. And yeah, let's yeah, you can adjust all the paddings separately. And let's make this container of the buttons and the size of the contents, like how get its contents. And now for example, this was the layout on the mobile, and I want to, like, if I have a huge, like, browser window, I want these buttons to be horizontal because I have space. I'm no longer confined to the mobile with or the screen. I'm just going to click this button, and it's basically types of the layout. It just does the same thing, but horizontally. It's like the same gap. You can just, it's the same hug, it's the same everything. It just applies the same logic horizontally. So, um, Yeah, and basically, you know that you can nest these layouts inside of each other. So there's one auto layout here, go one step up, and you have another layout, auto layout here, which you can change. Uh, there's a grid option now, and there's another option for the horizontal, which is wrap. And it just they have updated Figma yesterday. Ah, here it is. This means that if the container is like narrower, then the contents it just starts wrapping, and you can align the things within the container. Can do the center thing, and you can separately adjust the vertical spacing. So let's say I want to 28 or something. So you can adjust this independently. And of course, like it's very flexible, and no matter what you have inside, by the way, you can use arrows to move objects inside. It just adapts to it. Basically, it's like words in the text. Um, so, and then you have a web page, and you also want these elements to be centered, always centered, no matter what you do. Like if you resize the browser window, you don't want them to stick here. You just do the same thing. You do the auto layout. You can, of course, do this, and there's like a thing that is called constraints in Figma, which is like this uh, thing, but I think is more complicated for beginners than the auto layout, and it's harder to use. It sometimes works, sometimes it doesn't, and yeah, you need a really good understanding of how it works to really make use of it. And auto layout is just much more straightforward. So you see this auto layout, and I want to make it centered on the page. So let's make it so, and click the auto layout button. And you see that Figma did some guessing inside with this, and it guessed that the layout should be vertical. It decided that it needs to change the width of the frame for some reason, and it made it align to the left. But what you see now is that it has changed the width of this whole frame to fill the container, which is our page. And now you can like adjust this page window or whatever you want to the size of its content. And what I usually do is, yeah, and it even has had guessed these paddings, and it set this whole thing to hug. And what I usually do is I use auto layout all the way through from the from the bottom to the final application page. So let's make this like paddings smaller, and now you see that it looks like a block on the some page. And now let's make one more frame around it, and let's color it a bit differently. And let's also add auto layout to this. What I usually do, I just like Figma to do its guessing. I'm a bit lazy, so this would be our hero title for the, let's say it's a landing page. Let's make it huge. 64, 96, 96, 96. Yeah, let's make it smaller. And you see this hero title, and let's click the button again. Let's put Figma's brain to work, and it did a pretty nice job. It has set this to fill the width. It has guesstimated the paddings for us, and here we are. We have a pretty nice thing. You can add some corner radius and it works. And let's say I want to add a caption here. So what no, let's not go this far. Let's go back to our components and let's apply our knowledge there. I think this would be a better approach. So let's see what we have. We have this apple that is the right side, on the right side, and we have this section that we want to be on the left side. And this is actually just a rectangle that is like sized this way. And by the way, Figma has a smart auto layout that the feature is called suggest auto layout, and you can use it and it will actually guess all of the auto layout inside and will try to adapt to your design and create the auto layouts automatically. You can try it, but sometimes it does a really good job. But what I want you to try is to do a couple of auto layouts by yourself, so you get used to it, to how it works. Let's see. So from this layout, what I would do is, first of all, I want this top section to have its own auto layout. So I have the frame for these three items. So this is what the frame contains. This kind of pill, button, or whatever, title, subtitle, and yeah, that's it. This is the frame. What I usually do, I know that these two items will be closer than the button, for example. I just use, uh, by the way, you can use Command or Control on Windows and select objects inside of the frame. And once you also hold Shift, you'll be able to multi-select. It's similar to files or like many other applications. And I know that they're going to be closer to each other. And this is why I'm going to have auto layout around these two and then another auto layout here. Unfortunately, Figma doesn't support margins and it kind of creates a huge mess because usually on the web, the layout would be pretty simple. It would be just one container that contains these three things, and you would just add margin to each element to push everything back, push everything down. But in Figma, it's, I don't know the reason, but they are not giving us margins for so many years already. I'm not sure why, but they don't. And what I need to do is either create a special like frame around it just for adding more paddings, or group like items in new auto layouts. So this creates a lot of nested auto layouts. But there's no workaround this. Yeah, actually, this workaround of not having margins, but yeah. So let's add the auto layout to this thing. I just use Shift A shortcut. I had these two layers, and I just click type Shift A, and it creates an auto layout frame and guesses how it should work. So I create these things. I want them slightly closer to each other, let's say 6. And then I shift click this and add the spill to the selection. And now this is another auto layout here. And now I want like 2 equal sections, one on the left and one on the right. And I'm going to create one more auto layout, but for the whole component. And right now, this thing is set to custom width. I'm going to set it to fill the container. There is also a gap, which I don't want. So I'm going to select the container and remove this gap. So this gap was here. You can click this way. And once it's set to fill, it just fills all the available space. And this element could be set to fit. No, it couldn't for some reason. Oh, I don't need this frame at all. So to remove the frame, you just ungroup. And here you go. There's a shortcut for that, which is Command Shift G, or now it's Command Delete, Command Backspace. And so this frame is, let's say, it hugs to its content. So just occupies the minimal space possible, and this frame fills the rest of the space. So you can see this applied everywhere already. By the way, notice this gap. We will address it by setting the height to fill container. And now the container collapsed. Yeah, because if you change one thing, sometimes it's impossible for the container to maintain other settings, and it auto adjusts them for you, and it creates a mess. And it can be pretty annoying because sometimes it actually can remain the same, but Figma does change properties anyway. I think it can remain. For example, yeah, what we did here is just so what we have is we have the fixed size of the Oh, we don't have a fixed size. This was uh, the thing. We already have this hug for the height, and when we change this to fill, it just fills, but this whole container hugs to this thing because it's just like uh, the what it finds on the way, like the minimal content that has some size, because this thing doesn't have its own size. It just fills whatever space it has. Yeah, I realized it might sound a bit complicated, but I think you just need just like actually a ton of experimentations to familiarize with yourself with this, because if you do web development or some other kind of development, you're already familiar with all the quirks. But if you don't, if you just new to design or to design tools, to layouts and things like that, uh, it will take time. It will take time. Just uh, be calm and um, believe in yourself, and don't think you're dumb, because layout is not simple. It's really not, and um, it will take time to understand everything, to have this model of why everything changes and what's going on. So I've been doing this like God knows for how many years. So this is I'm almost never confused by this, but you, it might not be the case for you. So yeah, and I'm also a developer, so I can implement the same layout in for iOS, for web. So I'm familiar with all kinds of things that could go wrong and how everything works. Again, so let's yeah, but now you see that there's no gap, and you're actually getting closer, and just and if you see things like this, just don't jump and fix everything. It's all right. When you build your auto layout, it actually um, it's going to be doing these things a lot. So just um, perceive it as like a clay, like you're shaping your an object out of clay, and it just adjusts around what you're doing. So what I'm going to do now is just I'm going to make sure that these two occupy the same space horizontally, because this is the container and it has like one thing, another thing, and this thing already fills, and also want this container to fill the width. So I say we'll fill the container, and boom, now they occupy the same width. So far, so good. So you see that it's more and more robust, more and more looks smarter and smarter. At least I hope you can see this. And we need to address a couple more issues, and that will be it. So far we want so this thing to adapt to the container height, because these cards, let's put them here actually. Let's say we have three of them, and I'm not going to generate a new image. It will take a long time. That's how we have three of them, and we have a nice auto layout doing the thing for us. But we actually want this card to adapt to the height of this element. And we will set all of these three instances to actually fill the container. So whenever we do this, these cards adapt to its height and we have more space on the bottom. And the same goes for the width. I want all of these things to actually fill the container. So it works like this. It adapts to whatever we have. And to do this, I would just, to make it work properly and also be able to see whatever is going on here, I would just drag here and this make this height instead of hug, to custom instead of hug, to fixed instead of hug, and because there's nothing that drives the size of this component, because here it is set to fill and this component takes the height of this container, but here there's nothing around it, so we just manually make it larger, and we will um, we will what we will do, what I was going to say, we will make this work for everything, so, and for every possible layout. So right now I want this to occupy also all of the vertical space. Fill the container, and I want some padding because this is not looking good. So it's like the last thing. We are adding, by the way, let's add a property subtitle, sub subtitle. I think it's one word. Let's rename property. As you may have guessed, English is not my first language. And yeah, we see that everything adapts. And also if we some multi-line subtitle, we see that both of these things push this pill down. And now I see that I don't want this pill to be, I actually want this to be a button, and I don't want it pushed around at every step. So what if this is 2 lines? There's like already 3 sizes. I want it to be here kept at the bottom. And this is another auto layout option. So we see that we can set this spacing to something larger, but it will push the button to a different distance. So what we should do instead, we should just pick auto. What it does, it just occupies all the remaining space everywhere. So this button is on the bottom. By the way, I wonder if I can just type Alto here. I think I can. Yeah, it does the same thing. And yeah, we have a button on the bottom, and it works nicely. And what else? What else? We have cards. I think I've covered like most of the auto layout that you would usually use in your applications. And the new thing that Figma just added the day before is the grid layout. And it's, I never, it's just like the day before, it was added the day before or yesterday even. So I have yet to use it. I think I've tried it for like 5 seconds once, but I don't think it's more complicated. So let's just copy this frame and do the banter uh, grid. So let's switch this to the grid. And like to do a proper banter, you need some variation of the sizes. So I'm going to, the most flexible layout is 12 by 12 because of how the number 12 is divided to by anything. This is kind of annoying. I just wanted to change the numbers. So now we have 12 by 12 layout. And the frame is pretty, yeah, you cannot hug the grid for some reason because you can on the web. And let's make the gap. Let's not touch the gap yet. Let's just use the grid to make these cards of a different size. Yeah, I don't think it is very adjustable, but and they seem to not have any auto options. You know what? Let's make it like it's not super flexible, less flexible, but easier for example, you can divide 8 to all sorts of things also. Let's adjust this thing. And you see that when you just drag it here, when you adjust this whole grid, the height here adjusts, but it doesn't here. It kind of like has its own height always. So to make it adjustable, like automatic, you just wait until it snaps to this grid. And then, yeah, here you go. And you can change it and it adjusts. And also we need to snap it here. And it also adjusts. Let's make them 3. What happened? I just, yeah, unsnapped itself or what's going on? Let's snap it again and see how it goes. it just doesn't snap for some reason. Yeah, this is a new feature. I guess it's buggy. Uh, did it snap now? Or what's going on? No, it didn't. Maybe it's because there's another card on top of it. Let's put it here. Let's try again. Let's hope it snapped again. No. Yeah, it did. So remember, kids, never have anything on top of the element if you want it to snap. I just said it for myself because I'm just learning and the new grid in Figma. Yeah, and let's have some bento layout. Let's have it. Let's make it square but small. Let's make a copy of it and make it higher. I wonder what's going to happen if you copy. Yeah, just uses the same size and takes the next place in the grid. And um, I'm not good at Bantu building, so let's have these three cards. Maybe some central card here, which is like more central, and the others. I'm going to make it smaller so we have two rows here. Yeah, and let's make it look like this. Yeah, so seems to be working. So not too complicated. You still need practice, and I will need some practice to make it work. But you can make bantus and all sorts of other layouts that require grids, and you can change the size, but not with keywords. And type, make this column smaller. Yeah, you can just do whatever you want. Explore and you will learn. And the last thing, but a very important thing about auto layout is, yeah, I can go actually, can go on for hours, but um, let's see. One thing that just came onto my mind, just came to my mind is that you can actually sometimes you need something on top of the auto layout thing. For example, we have an auto layout and we might need some long label on top of this. So let's copy this text. This is not a master component. Let's go here and work on the master component. Yeah, I've copied this element and I wanted to go over the top of these two and also on the bottom. And in auto layout, there's a way to do this. It's called ignore auto layout. So you can put whatever you want here. And let's make it look nicer. let's say I want, yeah, let's go, let's add a frame to it. Let's make it white and not the frame, but the text. This is the selection colors. I'm just changing what's inside. I'm adding a fill to the frame and make it completely black. And I'm adding the auto layout to this thing. So remember that, like, if this thing ignores this auto layout, it doesn't mean that it cannot have its own. So I've added its own auto layout, make this hug the contents, make the text. What's with my text? Make the text also hug its own contents. Yeah, there are these options for the text layout. And now, yeah, and of course I'll make it smaller. Yeah, I just want to go realistic so you understand the reasoning behind all this and where it can get useful. Some tracking here, maybe medium, even smaller. And let's have some space around it. And let's keep it right like this. By the way, you can now use alignments here. So you can align these things to the right corner. And this is where constraints come into play. I think you've already listened for long enough for me to start talking a bit of constraints. So what they are not that complicated on the first glance, but what they become tricky. Just believe me. Just trust me. And uh, these blue things mean that this is going to stick to the bottom edge, this whole thing, and to the right edge of its container. So if I make the component, it just rides with this bottom right corner. And actually, I want some offset. So I do this, this. Yeah, and it works. It just um, stays on the same distance. You see these dashed lines. It means that it is attached to these edges of the frame, and but it stays right here on this distance, and this comes pretty handy because let's have the same distance. By the way, you can push the Alt button and see the distance. It's 16, and distance here is 18, and also make it 16 for these to align. Alignment is good. It should align stuff. And you see that, by the way, it adopts the subtitle property. Yeah, and this is, by the way, the case I was looking for. I'm not going to change it for now. So, yeah, this is the thing that overlays the two elements. And if we do like, yeah, we can add some effects to this. This is not fully transparent. and can now add the fancy background blur thing. Blurs the background. You see the apple is blurred. Generally you want a lot of it because you just want the colors to leak in, but you don't want them to interfere with reading the text. And yeah, here we are. We have some like fancy thing, and it works everywhere. We have touched like almost all the major things that we have with auto layout. And I think after all this, you should be set for designing your first application. Of course, there's always more. There's a lot of things you can cover, you can do in Figma. You can prototype, you can use variables for your fills, like can have libraries of components, like use these colors from the library. Um, by the way, for the frame, you can have for the components you can have variants. So you have like two variants now, and yeah, I want now let's make our component more flexible. Let's like add a variant. This is useful for the buttons, for example, when you have a button in different states that have a different style. And I want a hovered state for this card. And to do this, I just want to add a nice shadow to it. And as a glimpse, Figma has, I don't know how many plugins, maybe hundreds of thousands already. So one of them is smooth shadow. So if you wondered how people do cool shadows in Figma, so yeah, I can do them manually. I can draw. I know this stuff, but this frame clips the thing. Yeah, this is like a huge shadow, uh, smooth shadow again, and it picks up all the. It just creates a lot of shadows on top of each other, and you can just adjust them in a nice UI and just make the blur slightly. Yeah, can remove the blur and see all of these layers. Can add more layers, less layers. Yeah, I think this is okay. And you can the variance is also a new property. So you see the title, subtitle property, and this is a new one. Let's call it state. And now, and you can name these states. So if you pick one variant here, you can keep it the default. This one would be the hover. And now, whenever you need it, whenever you need the hover state, you just switch to it, and you have it. It retains the same things. I think the blur could be better. Yeah, let's stick with the defaults. Let's do it again so it resets. Smaller offset, smaller, tighter blur offset. Yeah, that's it. Um, yeah, it looks nice. I think good enough. And also, yeah, if you're still there here and you're still listening, um, you can actually prototype. It's very helpful in prototypes because if the state is triggered in hover, I would actually always want it to be triggered in hover. Let's switch to the prototype and drag. You can drag an arrow from one thing to another. This works for all kinds of frames and states and whatever. And I want, let's say, while hovering, to this object to switch to this state. And there's also an animation. There's a smart animate that would make a nice transition. And yeah, this default option is good. And there's a way to preview your prototype. Let's make it simple. Yeah, let's make it simple and let's make it here. I need to switch between the two modes to actually make adjustments here. I add a fill so it would look like some page or whatnot. And here we go. You have some kind of thing. I'll switch this back to the default. And now I'm going to run the prototype. There's a big play button, and there's a present option, and there's a preview. Present opens the whole new window for this, and the preview does similar thing, but just within this window. So this is our prototype, and when I hover an element, you see that it changes its state with animation. Isn't it cool? Yeah, Figma is pretty good. And yeah, this is this full preview thing. You can have scrolling and all kinds of things if the container doesn't fit the device. And here you go, you see this like full size. For some reason, it has picked the TV set as a device. You can hide the UI, do whatever you want. You can change the device. MacBook Air draws the MacBook Air here. And I think I did enough prototyping to get you started. I don't know if anyone's going to watch this video to the end, but I think I covered the all of the basic things you need to actually design your first UI in Figma. If you just start in Figma, I think this will get you covered and will get you a long way. So just remember to use auto layout, make repeatable things, components. Also, like learn to use variables, styles, but just don't dive too deep at first. You'll see where it is efficient and where it's not if you're using them a lot. But yeah, but still experiment. And as I've already said, the best way to learn something, to learn to design UIs and to actually learn graphic design, to make, to be able to learn to do cool visual stuff, and make your site look fancy is very simple. You just make a screenshot of anything that you would like to uh, be able to do. Just you make a screenshot of this thing in Figma and you just drag it here. You lock this layer. Where's the lock? Yeah, here's the lock. You just zoom in and just copy pixel by pixel. Just make sure you just copy everything as it is. Just pick the fonts and like do the stuff. Like if you overlaying something, you can lower the opacity and make it see-through to make it like easier to match. And here's how it's done. And I would make a frame, by the way, here, not a rectangle, because it contains things. So I would just do a frame. And you can, by the way, you can copy the styles. Command Option copy, Command Option E. I've copied the styles here, and I have a frame. And while you're doing this, you actually measure the sizes of the stuff. You will see how the icons are drawn. Yeah, you can get these icons from the Figma design system, but if you're just starting and really want to learn a visual design, you just copy everything, just pixel by pixel. This is slightly blurred, but it's not in reality because it's just vertically positioned and it's just half a pixel shift. So you need to make it sharp, and then like here, so it's positioned without like half pixels, so it's pretty sharp. So all the icons look sharp like this, and you basically do copy a lot of things. And since it takes a lot of time, I would advise you to go approach strategically here. Just if you want to make learn to do nice SaaS applications, you just go on Pinterest, on Dribble, wherever they are, or just go to the real application, make a screenshot, and just copy and paste it in Figma and do a copy of that. Because if you're copying Figma, and like by any means you will learn a lot, really lot. But if your next job is designing a SaaS application, this is not what you're going to use a lot of the times. But you will learn to make neat forms and neat layouts that are tight and well composed. But I would advise you to like copy the things you are going to do that you really want to do for your job. So if you're planning to a mobile application, you just make screenshots of the best mobile applications there are, and you have guessed it, you just copy them pixel by pixel, including the icons. If you want to design fonts, you just do the same. You just screenshot the fonts and copy them, or just type something in a font, freeze it, lock it on the layer, and copy it. Figma might not be the best vector editor, for the fonts, but you will learn it. You will learn a lot. If you want to do the landing pages, you just copy the landing pages. Um, just look what's cool and copy the landing page. Like that gets the most likes. Yeah, and I think, yeah, I hope this will help. Let me know if you want to learn anything else. But honestly, I don't believe in watching a lot of tutorials. Maybe sometimes, but you just like experiment and learn stuff by doing. And yeah, and if you're really stuck, you just then Google it and watch a tutorial on the subject. But you will mostly learn by actually doing the stuff. And again, while copying these, you just go real. You make the components. So you make the component for this thing and you reuse it here. And you use auto layout to lay out these. Everything is like full full adult mode, and you just see the states of these elements. You see the change colors. You copy all of this, copy all of the details, all of these editors. You just screenshot this slider, drag it in, and zoom in and see how it made in just like as a background and a transparent outline, and this knob has a shadow and also a transparent outline outside of it. There's a lot, not no outlines, but a tight shadow around it. There's a learn to that there's a lot to learn, a lot of details, a lot of tricks, like and um and honestly, this is like the best and the fastest way to learn visual design. And actually, I believe it's the only true way because no matter how much you talk about the colors, rules, layout, typography, you will never learn doing this. Like no matter how many books you will learn on typography, you will never learn typography. And if you just start following the advice from the books, it will look uh, uh, it's it will likely look awful because all of the real knowledge about this is not in the books. Um, it's there. It's in people's heads, and nobody can really explain every single decision they make. Why this tone is this and not darker and not lighter, and why this is lighter than the text, and why exactly this shade of gray, and why all of this. Like there are so many details. It's like millions of them. You will never find a book that explains all of them. And if you find a book that explains a good deal of them, you will actually waste your time because knowing them, it's not the same as like feeling them and being able to reproduce them stably in your design. And the only way to learn the actual skill of doing these layouts and all this is by is the dumbest way is just by copying, just copying, spending hours and hours and hours of copying on copying. Again, I hope this was helpful and tell me if you want to learn something else. Cheers. Have a good day or evening or whatever time of day you're watching this at.